All right, let's go ahead and get started this morning. Last time we ended, before we were rudely interrupted by the weekend, we were talking about Philip II. I call him Big Phil. And we mentioned his eyeball. Remember that? The fact that he only had one. I'm sure that's something he thought about every day. So it'd be all right for us to mention. Arrow in the eye. Kind of mess up your day. That's what happened to him. And here he is on a coin, so, nice curly hair there. All right, let's move on. We said he expanded a territory, and he was assassinated in 336. His assassination takes place in Pella, the capital city. There's a lot of intrigue around that, and some people like to implicate Big Al, or Alexander the Great, as I call him, Big Al. And perhaps more likely, Big Al's mother, Olympia, who, Philip, he had another wife, and he had another child, another son with that other wife who was much younger, and I think that got Olympia thinking that someday maybe that son would take his place, that is Philip's place. So if we get rid of Philip now, Alexander's old enough to move in, and of course Olympia's place would be secure because she's the mother of the king. Mother of the king, so yeah.
Is it true that the bodyguard was Philip's side lover that assassinated him?
Well,
or is that just conjecture?
That has been talked about. I don't know how much evidence we actually have for that. It was an inside job, there's no doubt about that. But yeah, that'd be worth looking into. I haven't actually looked at the intricate relationship details there. But most people have implicated his, I don't know if she was his former wife or just an extra wife, the first wife. And some have even implicated Alexander in on it, too. So, well, anyway, I think I showed you this map before, but maybe not. The darker, what I'm going to call purple, because for me there are only very few colors. I know for other people there's a whole cornucopia of colors. To me, like you got white paint, you go to the store and they got like 97 kinds of white paint. There's sort of brown paint, light brown paint, dark brown paint, So I'm going to call this purple and light purple. The darker purple part, and then the lighter, what do you want to call it? Mauve? No, it's not mauve. You want to call it, what is it? Lavender? What? Violet. Violet? I think violet's pretty dark, though. You're calling this part violet?
Isn't magenta pretty light? Or lilac?
Well, lilac, yeah, maybe.
Lilac,
Well, when I think of magenta, I think of having red in it. It's a reddish. Well, to me, pink is red. Pink is light red. But it has reddish tones from the reddish side of the wheel. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't see any red up there, but maybe I'm wrong. Because, I'd rather be dead than see red. Okay, so the lighter purple, Thrace and so forth, is what he adds. And of course, down here in 338, big battle, Charone, this battle is where Big Al proves himself, and he leads the cavalry charge and proves himself in battle 2 years before his father kicks the bucket. So they were moving their way down into the main part of Greece. It would have been, had Philip lived, I'm pretty confident he would have moved on down and maybe even expanded further. I don't know. But doesn't matter. That's what if, right? We don't know what if. We got enough to learn what was rather than what might have been. Although people like to talk about the what might have been more than what did happen, it seems. I don't know. I guess because you can then let your imagination go, as you guys say, cray-cray. No, you don't say cray-cray?
No.
No? Nobody says cray-cray? No?
Early 2000s.
What's that? I put it in your head? So you're saying cray-cray is like so last season?
Pretty much.
So last millennium? Someday, people are going to look at you and they're going to say, you were born in the 1900s? You're so old!
I get that now.
You get that now, okay. Well, anyway, Phil was buried here near Pella at the royal tombs. These have been discovered. They have been excavated. Okay, so there at the tombs, they found, for example, this golden box. Ooh, yes, it's gold. Well, it's probably gilded. My guess is it's, I don't know for sure, but I believe, if I remember correctly, it's a wooden box that's been covered with gold rather than a golden box, which would be much harder to make. So you can make the wooden box and you just put layers of gold over it, pound it on there, and it put the jewels on it. Anyway, still pretty impressive. You know, if you wanted to give me a box like that, I would not say, take it back. Well, the diagram of the royal tomb, you ask, what did the royal tomb look like? I'm glad you asked. I just happen to have a diagram of this royal tomb right here on the screen. Now, here's another one. Maybe it's better, a bigger one. One is a side view, like you cut it like a slice of cake. The other one is kind of a top oblique. This is actually an oblique view with the layers of soil removed. So you're not going to see this today. Actually, to see this, you would have to go to the pages of National Geographic where I borrowed this for educational purposes only.
But did you cite it?
I just did cite it.
I need a research page.
No, I don't have a resource page. Anyway, yeah, you know, a long time ago, and I still have them at home, I have the entire set of National Geographics on CD-ROM.
Wow.
Now, of course, it goes till about, 2000 or something, so I don't have like the last 10 years, 10, 15 years. When I got the thing, I called, this is back when you have to call, I called the number, 800 number, and I said, look, I'm thinking about buying these, but are you telling me everything was in the National Geographic? Yes. I said, including the maps? Yes. Including all the diagrams? Yes. I said, if I wanted to use those, would that be possible? They said yes. So I think that's verbal permission. Now, what they didn't tell me is they didn't make it easy to use that, see, the way I wanted to use it. I could bring the CD-ROM in here, have the page number, we go to it, show it to you. But what I did is I would bring it up on my screen, and then everybody's favorite, right-click, copy, right-click, paste. That's how most of the papers I get are produced. So, no, nobody, nothing, okay. That's just so matter-of-fact, it's not even funny. Anyway, but when I did that, it wouldn't work. So I had to find what I called a workaround. Of course, this is being recorded, and it was all done legally. Anyway, here they are, as if ripped from the pages of National Geographic, the diagram of the royal tomb. Now look what they did. They built it like a building. Well, it is, I guess, a building. However, the unusual part of it has a barrel vault. That's what we call a barrel vault. And it has columns and a facade and everything. Then they filled it over with dirt. Much like we see a tumulus, if you want to look up tumulus sometimes, You find tumulus or tumuli, would be the plural, in Asia Minor, in what today would be Turkey. Certainly find them there. And then you find these things in Greece. Now, some of the tumulus I've been in was actually the grave of Midas. Remember the guy with the golden touch? Midas. His burial is in a tumulus, earthen mound, where the building or the structure is made out of wood, not stone. And the wood is still in good shape. You can go in and see it, and you can see the building. So you have to go back in a tunnel in the side of the hill, and it's still all covered by dirt. Otherwise, it probably would not be in good shape. Anyway, what they did here is build a stone structure and then backfill it. They left the open part here. This is similar, if you remember when we talked about maybe you remember we talked about the tombs that were near Mycenae, and they were called tholos tombs, beehive tombs. You remember that? They were also made out of, so they had a different construction. They were, beehive shaped. This is barrel vault. But anyway, it's a similar idea. The idea is you sort of like you build a mausoleum and then you bury the mausoleum. You leave the facade open for certain ceremonies, then later they backfilled that as well. But anyway, back in there, they believe this is Philip's tomb. They found interesting things in there. For example, this is a quiver, which that's what happens when certain people walk in a room, you quiver. But this is for an arrow. This is for an arrow. I have a little chihuahua that quivers.
Which one? They both do.
They both will quiver, yeah. They actually do. I would say Daisy probably quivers more. She's a scaredy dog, as I call her. Instead of a scaredy cat, because she's not feline. Anyway, this kind of quiver would hold, of course, arrows, but this is not the kind of thing you're going to take into battle, I really don't think. Right? First of all, it's gold. It would be very heavy.
How would you even use it?
You put the arrows right in there and strap it on your back. I don't know. They probably just wore it in ceremonies, like coronation kind of thing, or big ceremony. And then in here, in this box, take a look. We've got gold oak leaves made out of gold, and then they have purple. Many people believe this is the cremated remains of the bones of Big Phil. After analyzing the bone fragments, which are in here, the bones were washed in wine and wrapped in purple cloth and gold oak leaves, or oak leaves made from gold. I don't know if you ever handled cremated remains like I have.
Not yet.
But it doesn't take much room. I guess what I'm getting at, it doesn't take much room to put a body. So this is doesn't have to be a big box. In fact, I once received cremated remains from the UPS man. And I'm not making it up, unfortunately. And it was in a little plastic box, and inside was a little plastic bag, and inside of that was presumably the remains. Well, it was remains. I just don't know of who. They told me who, but I don't think it'd be hard to know. So it doesn't take up much room. You don't need much room. You can reduce a person down to less than a Kleenex box size. Just in case you wondered.
That makes me feel so much better.
Thank you. And by the way, purple cloth. Have we talked about the purple cloth in here? Well, we should. Did we? We talked about it maybe in the Roman class.
Oh, yeah.
Probably
the
Roman.
snails.
The snails, yes. Good. There's a murex snails, and the snails then are raised. I mean, they're sea creatures, right? But of course, they have to gather them up, and then they take the poor little snails, and they have to extract the purple dye from their duct, their dye duct. of which each little snail probably has, I don't know, 2 or 3 drops. Okay? And it takes a lot of drops to dye something purple. Now, that kind of purple dye, I don't know who first discovered this process, but it creates a permanent dye. That's why it is so sought after. Because you can get a similar color, although not the same, made from vegetable dyes, but it's not permanent. It starts to fade pretty quickly. Especially when you use, the Tide in the automatic washer. Or you beat it on a rock. Anyway, this is why purple then is very expensive, because it takes just a few drops. So it would take literally hundreds, probably thousands of these snails to dye one, good-sized piece of cloth to make a robe or whatever you're going to make out of it. Therefore, it was very expensive, and since it was very expensive, only rich people could have it. Unlike today, where all you need is a credit card and you can get anything.
That's still, you still have to be rich to have a credit card. Somewhat.
Maybe. I guess they've tightened it a little bit. Yes?
Didn't Julius Caesar have his whole robe dyed purple, and that was like a big...
He did. Yeah, Roman senators would just have a band of purple around the bottom, typically, to signify they were senators. But Julius Caesar had his entire cloak dyed purple, and he would wear that. And so anyway, it also gets associated not only with wealthy, but powerful, and now even today we call it, like royal purple, things like that. So it has to do with royalty. Anyway, so we see it all the way back here. You see some of that purple dye still in pretty good shape, more than 2,000 years later, in a box. Let's go to Big Al now. And by the way, we meet on Friday again, so whatever we don't finish on Big Al, we'll finish then, maybe, or at least we'll move along till then. Alexander the Great, 356 to 323. Remember when his father died? I had the date up there earlier today.
336.
336. So that's when he comes to power, when he's 20. He's about 20 years old. His tutor is a guy by the name of Aristotle. Aristotle, the student of Plato, who was the student of Socrates. By the way, in my bathroom now, since you mentioned, in my bathroom I have a replica of a fresco which has an image of Socrates that was found at Ephesus, Turkey. Why is it there? I don't know. I bought it because I liked it, and it was in a box, and then my wife said, hey, let's put it here. That's why it's there.
Is it in your master bathroom or like the beach bathroom?
The big bathroom, yeah, the big one. Got a lot of strange stuff in there. What do you got?
That's an image to Heracles, isn't it? Having the lion head on himself.
Yes.
Trying to compare himself
You
to
see it?
Heracles.
Well, yeah, that was his hat. I like to call it his hat. It's his robe has the lion. Yes, this is one of the works of Heracles or Hercules, was killing the Numidian lion. And what?
Sorry.
Numidian?
Nemean lion?
Nemean lion? Yes.
Is that it?
Yes. And so he kills it as one of his labors. But, Alexander identified with Heracles or Hercules. And so that's why you see it. Yeah, good eye there. You saw it. I think that was a little snout right there. Okay. And then this is his mama, Olympias. And probably she was the mastermind behind the taking out of Philip to make sure Alexander came to power. Was Alexander in on that? I don't know. People love conspiracies. This is the other thing I know. People love conspiracies, and they like to talk about it for hours on end. Why? Again, it's sort of the what if or did it really? So I guess I tend to focus on more what actually we do know that happened, and we could speculate about other things later. Because I find most people don't actually know what happened. But they like to know what might have happened, or what could have happened, or what someone else said. The intrigue. People basically like soap operas, is what I'm saying. As I call them. I call them soap operas. I don't know what you call them. Don't have very many soap operas left these days. Well, anyway. Well, you know, except in real life.
As the world turns.
What's that?
I said as the world turns.
As the stomach turns. No, as the world turns. Yeah, I mean, there's still a few left. A few of the classics, I guess. But mostly it's now like strange people yelling at each other all day on TV, all night, all weekend, on like 300 channels. Ryan Seacrest, of course. How can you go wrong? Him and that other guy. Who's the guy that does the Kardashians and all those? He's got his own talk show too. What?
There's like 3 of them. There's like 3 male Kardashians.
No. The guy that gave us the Kardashians. I don't think it was Ryan Seacrest. No. It's this other guy. He's got his own talk show. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not up on all that stuff. You guys can look it up. Here's Big Al, as though ripped from the pages of National Geographic.
Oh, it is Ryan Seacrest.
And here he is coming on shore on Asia Minor. Well, at least I can get people looking up something. So he's landed on shore, and look, he's very happy and very defiant and very conquering and great. So he comes ashore. Remember the Hellespont. Remember that map I showed you, the territory that Philip had taken? He had taken the Hellespont. The Hellespont is a long, narrow strip of land that's on the European side of a rather narrow strait, right? The Dardanelles. And it's about, I'm guessing now, it's about 2 miles across. I mean, you can see the other side. When you're on one side, you can see the other side. So, and I've gone that way several times where, for example, if you take a bus from Istanbul and you're heading to see Troy, one way you can do it is just drive along that coast. And then when you get there, there's a large ferry. They drive the bus on it, and then it goes right across, and 20 minutes later, you're on the other side. At a place called Çanakkale, something like that. And that's pretty close to Troy. So when he gets here, he fights a battle near ancient Troy, and of course he goes and visits Troy because he's heard about it. He's never been there. He's read about it. He wants to see it. This is called the Battle of Granicus, where he defeats the Persian army near Troy. He then will move on through Asia Minor. We're at the famous Battle of Issus, or Issus, or some people call it Isus. They used to call it ISIS, but now that means something else, so Issus we'll call it. Battle of 333 BC, Battle of Issus. Here he actually engages the Persian emperor, whose name is Darius III, not to be confused with 1 or 2. Especially 1 is pretty famous. We've mentioned him before. This is the 3rd. He engages him in battle and actually targets him, but the emperor flees. And when the emperor flees, and I don't mean like on my dog flees, but with 2 E's. When the emperor flees, then his men lose hope. Okay, the soldiers lose hope, and eventually they are defeated. We'll talk more about that right here. Here it is. This battle is captured on a mosaic from the Roman period, which was a floor of a house, of a villa in Pompeii. Okay, so we call this Greco-Roman culture, right? Because the Greeks, their culture, copied by the Romans, we learn sort of interchangeably somewhat. But at any rate, this was such a famous story in the Roman period, and Alexander was so famous even then, that a very wealthy person put this, and it's about as big, I'd say this mosaic is almost as big as the floor in this room. It's about as long as this room. May not be quite as wide as the room. But anyway, it's big. It's maybe like from here, almost over to that wall. So it's a big mosaic. When you go in the museum in Naples, if you ever get a chance to go to the Archaeological Museum in Naples, I highly recommend it. I've been there maybe 3 times. Most recently, last summer, 2 summers ago. Anyway, no, maybe it was last summer. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. When you go in there, it takes up the whole wall. So here's what I recommend to you if you want people to look at you strangely, as if they don't already. Anyway, is when you get in the room, you should lay on the floor and then look at the wall. Because this is the way the ancient people saw it. They were standing on it. See? They don't let you stand on it. So the only way you can see it the way they saw it is to lay on the floor in the museum and look at the wall. It'll probably freak a lot of people out if you do that. But anyway, that's what I recommend. I recommend. It's not required. It's only a suggestion. Anyway, but it takes up the whole wall, and it'll definitely get your attention if you get back in that area where all the mosaics are. And there's amazing mosaics there. It's amazing stuff in that museum. The thing is, most people don't go to the museum because it's not on the tourist routes. I think because, I don't know, they don't make enough money on it or something. Plus, parking's kind of difficult. Plus, it's in Naples, and a lot of people don't want to go to Naples. Naples has a kind of reputation for being, high crime or something. Anyway, I recommend you go. Forget the crime. Just go. So here is Big Al. See him over here on the left with his horse, Bucephalus. He named his horse. He loved his horse. His horse was a gift. Anyway, he rode him in the battle often. And then here is Darius III. Notice how he's up higher. He is in a specially designed chariot. That's, like a double-decker or whatever you want to call it. It's an extra high chariot so that he could get up in the top of the chariot here and kind of see out over the battlefield and tell the other guys what to do. Okay, you go over here, go over there. Watch it over here. Send out commands. Bark out orders. But typically that meant he was behind the lines. He was behind the lines calling in directions, watching the battlefield. That was his style. That was not Alexander's style. Alexander's style was to lead in the battle. He's normally the first one over the wall, the first one into the fray. Whether on horseback or on foot, he would lead and his men would follow. That's Alexander's style. That was not Darius' style. So, when Alexander surveyed it, of course, you could see the guy because he's up above everybody else. And so he tells his men, a unit of his men, come on, let's push towards him. And they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing towards him. And this is the moment the artist here is trying to depict. The moment when he says, ooh, something's up. I got to get out of here. And then he orders his chariot to get out of there. When he does, his soldiers lose heart. And Alexander takes the victory. Now, here is what he's done so far. He started up here in Pella, as you can see. He moves down, he crosses the Dardanelles right here near Troy. He visits the city of Troy because it's famous. He fights the Battle of Granicus in 334 BC. You see that? He moves down to Sardis, famous city of western Turkey, and to Ephesus, yes, the same one that Paul writes the Ephesians, and to Miletus, yes, the same one where Paul sees the elders of the church, all this New Testament kind of stuff, although long before that, obviously, about 400 years before. And then he comes along the area here. He actually takes a loop and goes up through the highlands of Anatolia. This would be Cappadocia. And then he goes up to Gordian. Anybody ever heard of Gordian? Something very famous at Gordian. Yes, the Gordian knot. Very good. Give yourself a silver star. No, a gold star. Make it a gold star. It's a fictitious gold star in your fictitious crown. People used to tell me, as I think I told you in here before, whenever they would ask me to do things for them and they weren't going to pay me anything, they would say it would be a jewel in my crown when I get to heaven. They say, well, that'll be another jewel in your crown in heaven. And I wanted to find, well, what Bible passage are we talking about here? But anyway, it just basically meant I'd be lucky if I got a slice of pizza. That's what it meant. Move this piano up the 3 flights of stairs. It'll be a jewel in your crown. Uh-oh, he's going to comment on the pizza. Go ahead.
No, I was actually going to talk about that.
Oh, well, good.
What's up with thieves?
What's up with thieves?
Well, I mean, it said in the past there was a battle.
Oh, see, now you want me to talk about everything. That's good. Well, you know what happens is when Big Al comes to power in 336, remember that? Not everybody, and I should have mentioned this, you're right. I'm glad you pointed it out. Not everybody, not all the Greeks were happy about this. They figured this, what? If Philip's dead, guess what? We can get our independence. Because Philip's dead, that means we don't have to answer to anybody, right? So they start to rebel against Macedonian control. And so Alexander has to take his army, his Macedonian army, Greeks, and march on Greece. And he fights a big battle at Thebes, 335. Yes?
Alexander almost died one of the earlier battles that he fought in Persia.
Yes. Let me finish this about Thebes. He comes into town and he does something was kind of unthinkable to some people at the time. He totally destroys the town. I mean, he sets it on fire. He rips buildings down. He wants to make it an example. The only thing he spares is one house. You know whose house it is? The house of the poet Pindar. Alexander liked his poetry. And he knew this was the house. Oh, this is the house of poet Pindar. He saves that. But he tears down the rest of the town. He has his men just... Why? Well, when people hear, if you rebel against Alexander, this is what happens to you. So I guess we're not going to do that. This sort of sets the pattern early on there in 335, before he then comes back to Pella and marches against the Persians. Why is he going against the Persians? Why does he care? What had they done to him?
He wants payback for something.
Wants payback? Okay. They did.
It was part of his father's vision.
Yes, part of his father's vision and part of the payback. When did the Persians ever invade? Athens, but it had been what? It had been almost 200 years. 200 years later. Alexander believed he was a Greek, even if people in Athens didn't think he was a Greek. He took offense that the Persians had invaded Greece and had burned the city of Athens. And he wanted to seek revenge. And yes, this was part of his father's plan as well, was to at least go into Western Asia Minor. But Alexander, of course, has a grand vision of really punishing the Persians. So, as he marches down, he gets to Gordian. You mentioned the Gordian knot. What are the stories? Anybody know the stories about the Gordian knot? It cannot be untied, cannot be undone. And so, according to the stories, it's on a hitch. It's like on a wagon hitch. It was in the center of town. This very complicated...
Oh, didn't they hide his horse too?
Very complicated knot.
Must be a different story.
Very complicated knot. So sometimes people say, this is like untying the Gordian knot. It's basically, you're not going to be able to do it. So the story, the legend was that anyone who could untie it would rule, Asia Minor, rule Lydia, rule the area. And so Alexander, according to the story, does what? He cuts it. Yeah, he cuts it. He takes his sword and he just cuts the knot in two and undoes the knot by force. Yes.
Doesn't he say something like, it doesn't say who can untie the knot, it says like who can undo the knot or something.
Yeah.
He undid the knot.
Well, right? It's the letter. He wants the letter, not the spirit of the law, I guess. Right? Which, of course, is what most of you like. I mean, not all of you aspire to be lawyers, except when it comes to things dealing with course requirements and university procedures. Then we're not legalists when it comes to the Bible. We're very legalistic when it comes to the student handbook or things like that. Anyway, well, it doesn't say that if I hop on one foot, I can't do it. That's true, it doesn't. This is why rule books get so long. Here's the thing to remember. Every strange rule or law that you encounter, remember somebody did that. That's the only reason it's a rule or a law. If nobody had not ever done it, it wouldn't be a law. Well, think about it. Don't think about it now, though, because we're thinking about this. So anyway, so he comes in, he undoes that, and he comes back down through the Cilician gates. There's some high mountains here. There's a sort of a plateau up here. You go through these mountains. They're beautiful mountains, by the way. I've been down through the Cilician gates, and you come down into Tarsus. Know anybody from Tarsus? Paul, the Apostle Paul is from Tarsus. And then not too far from Tarsus is Issus. 333, this is when he encounters Darius III in person in battle. Here he's been fighting the Persians, especially here. He fought Persians, but not the emperor. Now the emperor's heard about it. He's come here and they fight. Now, here's the thing. Here's a question for you. You've got Darius on the run. Let's say you're Alexander. You got Darius on the run. You saw him. He's right there. And you're going after him. And he turns and he takes off. What are you likely to do? Chase him, of course. Let's go get him. Let's take him out. Let's finish him off. Whatever phrase you want to use, right? Alexander does not do that. He does not chase him. I'm sure his men thought that Alexander was, to use your expression, cray-cray. Oh, no, you can't use that now. But it's in your mind, so you'll use it today. That Alexander was, loopy. He ought to do this. What's the matter with him? We got him on the run. He's right there. Let's go get him. We could catch him. But Alexander knew that he was going to head to his heartland back here. He's going to head into Mesopotamia. That's where he headed. But Alexander knew the Persians had a lot of territory down the coast of the Mediterranean all the way around to Egypt. And so what Alexander does is he turns and he goes south along the coast and he lets the emperor get away. Why? He doesn't want to potentially face a two-front war. He doesn't want to move into this and have Persian forces behind him and Persian forces in front of him. So, he takes kidneys, he uses his kidneys, and he moves south. Now, as he moves south, one of the biggest battles he's going to have, maybe of all these battles, is the Battle of Tyre. Tyre. You've heard about Tyre, because I know you're all biblical scholars. So you know Tyre is mentioned many times in the Old Testament, especially in the prophets.
That's where the purple came from as well.
Tyrian purple, yes. Yes, those seashells or sea snails are on the Mediterranean, and a lot of them along this part of the Mediterranean. Yes, Tyre, you can find them in Caesarea. I have a shell at home somewhere of one of these shells that I found at Caesarea, which of course was legally moved here as a teaching sample for those of you listening at home. Anyway, Not just a snail. It's just a shell. Battle of Tyre. Now, does anybody know how Tyre is described by the Old Testament prophets? Good buddies with Israel or not? Not good buddies. And how's it described? Is it, a bunch of pushovers or? Powerful.
Powerful seafaring.
Powerful seafaring. In fact, they believed, and they were for a long, long time, undefeatable city of Tyre. This is who Alexander comes up against now. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it in? I think it's in Ezekiel, right? That Ezekiel prophesies that Tyre will fall to a power coming from.
Yes. Yes, in fact, we read in the prophets of the fall of Tyre and how haughty, I guess, how's that? How haughty Tyre is, but it will fall. God will cause it to fall. And in fact, how all this land will be divided up, conquered, and divided into 4 parts. In fact, people believe when they read these prophets, some of them would say, the prophets had to be written after the time of Alexander the Great because they are so correct about what's going to happen. These are people who believe there cannot be prophecy, that doesn't work that way. That what if you read something and it's correct, it had to be written after the fact. It can't be predictive. Predictive? Yeah, predictive. Anyway, so, now, why was Tyre so tough to take? Why was it so undefeatable or secure? Because, in fact, the arrangement of the city, it had coastal territory, lots of coastal territory, right? But it also had a large island that was right offshore, about a mile away, half mile, a mile away. And that was a large island. And, of course, Tyre had such an incredible navy that if anybody wanted to take this, they needed to have a great navy and a great army. And since Tyre had such a great navy that no one could really rival, it was basically undefeatable, if you could possibly take it. So, Alexander the Great does not have a navy. But, spoiler alert, he does take the city of Tyre. How does he do it? Well, not easily. He actually took the city that's on the mainland, and instead of just moving on, you say, hey, look, those guys are out there. We're going to have to build this. We're going to do something. We don't have a navy. What are we going to do? Let's just move on. Maybe we'll come back, take care of this later. No. Alexander, much like he did back in Greece, did not want to leave anyone who could say they had withstood Alexander and his army. So he spends months taking this city. Months. Why? He takes the mainland part, and then it's about 2 miles he has to build. He builds a causeway. He takes the rubble of the city of Tyre and he dumps it into the Mediterranean, and he builds a road, basically. He builds a path by dumping rubble and dirt, often using the people he captured in the city of Tyre, to dump it out to the island. And then once that was completed, he took the island, because now it's on land. Now, he had to fight. And again, as you could see, as though ripped from the pages of National Geographic, him fighting onto the causeway and breaking down the walls, because this island had walls on it as well. So here's Tyre. So you can see he moves south. Tyre, 332. He spends most of a year, several months there. Then he moves on down. He does have a small battle at Gaza. He does then enter into Egypt, where he comes down to Memphis, which was the capital. He goes up and he establishes Alexandria to be his new capital of Egypt. Names it after himself because he's so modest. In fact, there are several Alexandrias. You have to be careful. There are several of them around that are all named after Alexander the Great. This is the most famous. This is the largest. This becomes one of the main cities in the Hellenistic world. Then he decides, I think just kind of for fun, because he's also sort of a tourist, He wants to go to Siwa. Because around the ancient world, there were at least 3 famous oracles.
Delphi.
Yes! Delphi, the Oracle of Delphi. Telemusus, so you know another one?
No.
There's one at Didyma, which is not too far from Ephesus. It's right about there. So I'm sure he visited that one. And then the other really famous one, it's sort of exotic because it's in Egypt, is Siwa. And it's out in the desert at an oasis. So he goes out there, and then when his men cross this way to Memphis, they get lost, they get caught in a sandstorm, and big troubles, but they make it, obviously. And while Alexander is here, he is declared by the people of Egypt the divine son of Ra, the Pharaoh of Egypt. He kind of liked that idea that he was divine.
Wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know. Now, here is Tyre, okay? Here is the mainland. Here is the island. Here is the causeway which Alexander built. Now, the causeway is much bigger today than it was that he built. But that causeway then causes to change the sand and so forth, and then people dump more in there probably later. And now, if you visited the city of Tyre, you probably wouldn't even realize that this is the original island, and this is the mainland, and this is the causeway which Alexander the Great built.
Have a minute.
We have a minute. Okay. So we can see then that Alexander even changes the geography of the world. But why does he do it? He does it because he does not want to leave any city behind that can claim they survived his military force, because that would encourage others to fight him even more. All right, let's leave it there for now. Friday we'll pick that up. We'll see you then.
Dr. Martin.